Happy Teachers Day here in Korea, and thanks for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Coming up on today's program. A number of Korean firms fall victim to the global ransomware attack over the weekend, putting computer users on edge and sending cybersecurity shares climbing. More and more people here in Korea are turning to opening up their own businesses amid the country's high unemployment rate. These stories and more coming right up. Koreans look to be borrowing at a slower speed, continuing the deceleration momentum of the country's household debt logged in the first quarter. According to the Financial Services Commission, household lending issued by bank and non-bank entities added 7.3 trillion won, or just under $6.5 billion in April. The sum is $1.5 billion less than what it was in the same period last year. The Financial Services Commission attributed the slowdown to rising market interest rates and risk management. It expects the rebalancing to continue as the property market stabilizes and the U.S. Fed mulls over future key interest rate hikes. A new report from the Korean Economic Association suggests that Korea will need to diversify its macro-financial policies to ensure the health of its financial system. The report says following the global financial crisis, countries worldwide have faced challenges such as low growth, low inflation, and financial instability. In the face of these changes, it adds central banks have assumed larger roles in ensuring financial stability, but that added responsibility requires more than just monetary policies centering on interest rate adjustments. It points out that the Bank of Korea has not laid out specific ways to achieve financial stability, a goal that was added to the central bank's official founding purpose back in 2011. Possible measures include the BOK taking part in the management of macroprudential regulations or setting up a separate permanent body instead. Korea's benchmark stock index, the Kospi, has been hitting record highs this month, and alongside that has seen a huge increase in the average total value of shares changing hands each day. According to Korea Exchange on Monday, so far in May, that figure stands at a daily average of $5.9 billion, a whopping increase of 45% from the previous month. And it's the highest level in 22 months, going back to July of 2015. Analysts attribute the surge in transactions to strong buying by foreign investors. The Korean equity market didn't move much during the first session of the week, and the market didn't appear to have any dominant factors affecting sentiment. For more on the overall stock market performance and upcoming market events, our markets contributor Choi Jin-seok joins us in the studio today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how did the Korean stock market close on the first day of the week?
Volatility in both the Kospi and the Kosdaq market was relatively limited in the first session of the week. The Kospi rose slightly by 0.2% to close at 2290.65, while the Kosdaq rose by 0.26% to close at 645. The Kospi market opened the session with a slight downtick due to political uncertainty stemming from the U.S. There are now concerns over delays in President Donald Trump's growth measures. As a result, foreigners unloaded massive amounts of shares to drag down the Kospi index. However, institutional investors bought shares on the Kospi to help the market reverse its direction into positive territory. By sector, distribution and cosmetics companies enjoyed a decent rally. On the Kosdaq, most blue-chip stocks performed relatively strongly.
Now, there are no clear factors driving sentiment, but if you had to point out some elements affecting certain sectors or certain companies, what would they be?
Right. One of the factors would be the ransomware attack called WannaCry that has hit countries around the world. That was of concern as people return to work today. As a result, the share prices of security software firms in Korea enjoyed a sharp rally. Anlem, cybersecurity firm founded by a politician, An Chol-soo, once rose by around 5% during the session, and the list also includes Igloo Security and its soft that enjoyed an even more dramatic rise. Just like political uncertainty or geopolitical risks, we saw non-market factors affecting sentiment heavily, especially on a day without important catalysts.
Now, as you said, not many market events are lined up for this week, but what are some of the catalysts that are expected to sway the market?
As we're going towards the end of the Q1 earnings season, both at home and abroad, global investors are expected to pay much attention to major retailers that will report their quarterly results. The list includes Home Depot on Tuesday, Target on Wednesday, and Walmart on Thursday local time. Corporate earnings were very robust both at home and abroad last quarter. The total operating income of Kospi companies stood at 49 trillion Korean won, and the earnings growth for S&P 500 companies was 13.6%, the best since Q3 of 2011. However, major U.S. retailers, including Macy's and Nordstrom, experienced a sharp decline in their share prices due to disappointing earnings reports. U.S. April retail sales rose by only 0.4%, falling short of market expectations as well. Therefore, the reports this week could help mitigate concerns among investors about slowing consumer spending in the world's largest economy.
And although there aren't a lot of economic indicators reported this week, what do you think investors will be taking a closer look at?
Housing and manufacturing data from the U.S. are expected to attract attention from global investors. On Tuesday local time, we'll have housing starts, building permits, and industrial production data. Recently, some experts have been paying attention to slower economic recovery in the so-called G2 countries. Therefore, it will be important to see if this week's data can mitigate such concerns. Other than the US and China, there are some important indicators from the Eurozone. GDP growth data and the consumer price index will be reported on Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively.
Now, as you just said, the stock market and economic indicators coming out of China have been quite sluggish so far this year. So what do you think can reverse this negative trend?
The Shanghai Composite Index fell again on a weekly basis, marking a 0.6% decline last week. The index has broken through key support levels such as 3,200 and 3,100 as well. The country's April economic data reported today indicated growth momentum slowing after a strong Q1. But experts project the results of the Belt and Road Forum might help lift sentiment among economic sectors and in the equity market. The two-day forum draws to a close today, and large investment projects are expected to play a key part in the Chinese market in the near term.
All right, thank you so much for that today.
Thank you.
Korea is among the 150 countries that have been affected by Friday's unprecedented malware attack, which has infected more than 200,000 computers worldwide. Now, the virus locks up computers while threatening to delete all their data unless the owner pays a ransom of several $100s. Our Lee Ju-young has the story.
According to the Korea Internet and Security Agency on Sunday, 4 unnamed Korean firms have fallen victim to the unprecedented global cyber attack that occurred over the weekend. The culprit, known as WannaCry, is categorized as a ransomware, which encrypts all the user victims' data files and threatens to delete them unless a payment is made. In addition to the 4 firms that officially reported damage, 3 other institutions, including a university hospital, have made inquiries on the malware as of Sunday afternoon. Attempted breaches on over 4,000 IPs in Korea have been detected by local cybersecurity monitors so far. Experts fear the ransomware could wreak additional havoc with the start of a new work week, with many employees returning to the office to turn on their workstations. In response, the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning raised its cyber attack alert level by 1 notch to caution and has formed an emergency response group to prevent and combat any further attacks. Many businesses and institutions across the world have been paralyzed by the attack. A number of Russian government agencies have reported attempted breaches, while in the UK, technicians are working around the clock to restore hundreds of hospital computers that have been infected by the ransomware. Elsewhere in Europe, Germany's national railway saw large disturbances in its operations, while French carmaker Renault was forced to halt its production line in Slovenia to stop the malware from spreading. Although a 22-year-old British cybersecurity researcher has been credited with slowing the malware attack when he accidentally stumbled upon a kill switch, authorities remain on high alert, with experts saying the attackers could tweak the code and launch a fresh wave of attacks. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
1 in 5 employees here in Korea working extra long hours. According to Statistics Korea, some 5.3 million people are working more than 54 hours a week, up more than 500,000 from just a year ago. They make up about 20% of the country's entire workforce. Back in the year 2000, it was more than 42%, but then fell sharply thanks to the adoption of a 5-day work week in 2004. However, the decline slowed down once the system was fully implemented in 2011. Currently, the legal limit on weekly work hours is at a maximum of 68 hours, but President Moon Jae-in has pledged to cut it to 52. The president says that means companies will have to hire more workers, which he says would create an estimated 300,000 jobs. The number of self-employed of small business owners has been on a steady rise since August of last year, exceeding 5.6 million in April. Our Elliot Kim has more on this trend.
Son Sung-rak is a self-employed small business owner who left a restaurant 2 years ago to start his own pub. He has 2 kids and decided to run his own place because of his limited paycheck. These days, he's become increasingly concerned about the state of his financials. Due to the ongoing economic downturn, similar shops in the area continue to struggle, but that hasn't stopped the continual rise in numbers. As of last month, there were 5.6 million self-employed, up 120,000 from a year ago. And while the grass may look greener on the other side, they're finding it's not always that way.
Nowadays, there are half a dozen new shops around here. Profits can be good today, but poor tomorrow.
The number of self-employed started to see a rapid rise in August of last year when corporate restructuring of the shipbuilding industry began in earnest. It's not only workers in such industries, but also young people who failed to enter the job market, and senior employees facing early retirement who are setting up their own businesses. The figure has hit its highest in the last 5 years, with the country seeing an increase in the restaurant and services industries.
They're looking for businesses they can start with just themselves and their families so they have no payroll burden.
The dominance of large corporations makes it difficult for small businesses to succeed, and shrinking domestic demand hasn't helped. Many of the self-employed small business owners are using second-tier financial loans with high interest rates to fund the ventures. The real concern is if there's a sharp increase in the interest rates and businesses are unable to pay back their loans, it could lead to a much bigger crisis. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
Japan is expected to renew efforts to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, excluding the U.S., out of concern that the agreement could fizzle out if talks don't remain active among the 11 remaining countries. According to a report by Japan's Sankei Shimbun, Tokyo will officially propose that remaining members push for ratification during a meeting with trade ministers in Hanoi this coming Sunday. Now, this comes after U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from the mega trade pact after taking office back in January. Analysts believe that if the TPP is resurrected, it will counter pressure from Washington on bilateral trade pacts it's hoping to negotiate with member countries. But reviving the deal will be challenging. It still requires ratification from a majority of its members, and it's unclear whether the remaining parties share Japan's enthusiasm. China's President Xi Jinping has pledged to invest $124 billion into his new Silk Road plan. Formerly known as the Belt and Road Initiative, President Xi's ambitious plan aims to rebuild ports, roads, and rail networks. Our Nuara tells us more.
The Belt and Road Initiative was first unveiled 4 years ago, but the timing of President Xi's major funding pledge comes amid US President Donald Trump's protectionist policies. The Chinese leader called it the project of the century as he hosted leaders of 29 countries at a forum on the initiative on Sunday. He said the project aims to forge a path of peace, inclusiveness, and free trade. President Trump is pushing his America First policies and has long criticized global trade deals. President Xi, however, urged his global counterparts to build an open platform of cooperation and uphold and grow an open world economy, adding that trade is the important engine of economic development. China's multi-billion-dollar plan is intended to expand trade links between Asia, Africa, Europe, and beyond, with massive investment in infrastructure along the way. It would span at least 65 countries, including more than 60% of the world's population and 30% of global GDP. The Chinese president's funding pledge includes an extra $14.5 billion into the existing Silk Road Fund, $55 billion in loans from 2 policy banks, and $8.7 billion in aid to developing countries and international institutions that form part of the Belt and Road project. However, Xi did not give a timeline for the new loans, aid, and funding. President Xi also reassured Western nations that the project was not China's attempt to assert its global influence, saying it would benefit everyone. But some Western countries, as well as some of China's neighbors, have expressed concern that Beijing might be using the new Silk Road to mask its geopolitical ambitions. Noah Ram, Business Daily.
Now, fresh indicators out of China suggest the world's second largest economy could be slowing down. Chinese factory output growth slowed in the month of April on the back of plunging prices of steel and iron ore. It ticked up by 6.5% on year, which fell short of analysts' expectations, as well as what it was in March by more than a full percentage point. Fixed asset investment also missed forecasts, expanding by just under 9% in the first 4 months of the year, which dropped from the January through March average of 9.2%. Private investment growth also slowed to 6.9% in the first 4 months, suggesting a tough financing climate for small and medium-sized businesses. We're seeing the demand for electric cars rising sharply worldwide. Now, here in Korea, more than 1,700 EVs were sold in the first quarter, almost 9 times the number sold during the same period last year. Hyundai Motor's Ioniq was the best seller, accounting for the majority of EV sales at 1,300 units. In the United States, the market grew by 40% on year, with more than 21,000 sold in the first quarter. Europe bought more than 32,000, marking a 37% jump. But in the biggest market, China, growth has been relatively sluggish so far this year. About 44,000 EVs were sold in the first quarter, an increase of just 5%. For some young couples, wedding day is an opportunity not only to make a statement about how much they love each other, but also how much they care about the planet Earth. Let's take a closer look at these so-called green weddings.
The Seoul World Cup Stadium. It is an urban ecology park stretching out on vast expanses of forest and wetlands. On this year's Earth Day, April 22nd, a meaningful event was held in the park. A green-minded couple decided to commemorate this day by holding their wedding on the green grass under the blue sky. In an eco-friendly wedding, a couple walks down the aisle in nature, minimizing any waste throughout the entire process from planning to wedding day and shying away from a conventional reception.
Weddings have become increasingly overpriced and standardized, and there are many young couples who can't afford such high-cost weddings. This is why the Seoul Metropolitan Government is offering this public park as a wedding venue so that couples and guests can enjoy a picnic-like wedding.
Eco-friendly weddings began in Western countries as a movement to reduce greenhouse gas footprints associated with a typical wedding. Eco-friendly weddings in Korea involve more specific ideas to save the environment.
What sets an eco-wedding apart from an ordinary wedding? First of all, a wedding altar is set up outdoors instead of a city wedding hall, which consumes a large amount of electricity and water. With natural, warm sunlight, there's no need to rely on electricity. The trees take the place of garlands that are thrown away after use. Instead of air conditioning, a fresh breeze fills a bride's waiting room. The picturesque aisle is charmingly decorated with flower pots, which are later used as gifts for wedding guests.
The wedding takes place in a natural setting with flowers. I think it's meaningful and nice to have a wedding like this, as long as the weather permits.
The couple vows to love each other until death do them apart and protect nature and life.
We dream of an inclusive world where we get along with our neighbors and nature. We will keep this hope alive for the rest of our lives and lead a happy life as the guests wish for us.
It is a heartwarming wedding which respects both people and nature. A formal reception is turned into a party where guests can have the time of their lives. The guests are given boxed lunches that have been pre-ordered based on the number of RSVPs, which means there are hardly any leftovers after the wedding.
There were many expenses incurred for my wedding, and I had difficulties preparing for the big day. But my friend looked very relaxed today. She really seemed to enjoy her wedding.
Everything was perfect. We wished the best for the newlywed and had a great time. It was like a festival.
An eco-friendly wedding is about 40% cheaper than a conventional wedding. The central and local governments provide forests and parks as a wedding venue for free or at a low price to promote the concept of green wedding that saves energy and resources.
This is one of our projects aimed at encouraging young couples to start a new chapter in life and make a happy family. The city government also rents out halls and other venues for small and reasonable weddings.
What's driving the eco-friendly wedding trend? Well, wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. About 330,000 couples spend their money on 450 million flowers, 150 million wedding cards, and an unimaginable amount of food. To add to the problem, the congestion around the wedding halls creates over 4.93 million tons of carbon dioxide. Among those voicing concerns about environmental issues regarding weddings is eco-designer Lee Young-jae. She designs wedding dresses made of green materials. These look just like any other wedding gowns, but they are made of natural material consisting of cornstarch and traditional Korean paper.
I was worried that the natural material might be too rough or coarse, but the gown was so soft and luxurious.
I wasn't expecting much, but it looked just like any other wedding gown. In fact, it had a pure and natural feel to it. I really liked it.
They can also be turned into daily wear after the wedding. Lee decided to design eco-wedding dresses after finding out that about 1.7 million wedding gowns made of synthetic fiber are thrown away each year.
In the past, I used to focus on external elements such as fancy silhouettes, flamboyant patterns, and trendy colors. But after studying green eco-friendly designs, I'm more concerned about whether the design is what the world needs and what impact it will have on the environment when discarded after use.
An eco-friendly wedding demonstrates a couple's hope and willingness to create a better world. And this novel trend makes us reflect on our long-standing conventional wedding practices.
And that wraps it up for today, but we'll be back tomorrow with the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.